All right, guys, today I'm here with my buddy Jim, and we're going to look at a self-defense technique into a judo throw known as o-goshi, but we're going to modify it a little bit to make it easier. I don't know how many of you have tried o-goshi and you feel pressure on your shoulder or additional pressure on your back. So today we're going to look at modifying this throw. When we modify this throw, it's actually going to become a different throw known as uki-goshi. So we're going to have a major hip throw, and then we're going to have a floating hip throw, which I prefer for this particular technique. So today we're looking at o-goshi, which is a major hip throw, but I'm going to modify it into really what's more of an uki-goshi, a floating hip throw, which I think is much better for athletes that have some tenure, that may have previous joint injuries, knee, back, shoulder. Typically this one does pull on my shoulder. If I just get into a standard side clinch, holding a tricep, or maybe I'm over his tricep here from a self-defense move. But just from a standard clinch, I'm holding the tricep, I'm holding the hip, and I'm to the side. As I step in front, this is o-goshi. I step in front, load the hip, and I toss. It's not a difficult throw, but I know personal experience, I know training partners, and I know many of you probably find it difficult on your back or shoulder because as you fit into the throw, it's this second step. It's not the first step, it's not the clinch. It's the second step, getting this through to load. My back is torqued, my shoulder, I used to pop this shoulder a lot in judo from trying to do this throw, and it's because I don't have a proper load. I haven't properly pulled him forward to begin the throw. But there's a way to modify this to uki-goshi. The reason I modify this actually comes from training in a different discipline. So we're going to look at a technique from Aiki Jiu-Jitsu that uses, it's actually called koshiguruma, hip wheel. And I started using this technique and thinking of how it's slightly modified for my judo o-goshi, which really just made me transition to uki-goshi. But if he does a lapel choke and I'm off to the side, I can twist his elbows up, which prevents the choke, but here comes the throw. Now in Daito Ryu Aikijujutsu, what we don't do is turn the face completely this direction, which would be a throw. I'm off to the side. I bend his elbows, that prevents the choke, but I'm not turning and facing completely front, as in o-goshi. I'm continuing off at about a 45-degree angle. I step to the side, I come in at a slight angle, and the throw is very simple because he's going over just a small corner of my hip. Did that feel pretty effortless? Yeah, so take a look at that in a self-defense application where I've come to a side clinch, maybe off of a punch or something. So he throws a punch. So off of self-defense, he's going to throw a haymaker. I block. I come into a side clinch. Instead of the traditional judo version of o-goshi where I'm walking forward and straining, the only modification I'm going to make is the way that I took this from Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm going to go off at about a 45-degree angle instead of turning. And tell me how this feels. I'm going to have to do that again. That was fast.
Yeah, that was good.
So I'm going to do both of them. I'm going to do o-goshi and I'm going to do uki-goshi off to the side. Both very viable. One of them is just much easier in my opinion. So he throws a haymaker, I'm off to the side, I have a side clinch, here comes o-goshi. Nothing wrong, although I did feel some strain on my shoulder. Jim outweighs me by a little bit and it's pure muscle. Same thing, but instead of turning my body all the way, I'm literally going to continue walking. So instead of taking the clinch and turning, I have the clinch, I'm just going to walk and continue that direction. So let's see how that looks. Haymaker comes in, I block, I come to a side clinch. Instead of turning full facing, I'm just going to walk. very fast, much faster than o-goshi. Okay, so the reason this technique works faster and more efficient is because I have less surface area for him to be thrown over. When I do o-goshi and I step in front, as I come in forward, it's a major hip throw, so I'm pulling him over my whole hip, my whole back for the throw. When I do uki-goshi, I'm literally walking forward in a 45-degree angle, and as I throw him, he's only going over this small corner of my hip. So it's very fast. The rotation is fast. The effort is very small. Okay, so now Jim's going to throw me. So simply from a very slow, have a haymaker, you're blocking, wrapping it up on the side. Do o-goshi first by stepping directly in front of me. Okay. Valid technique. This time, I just want you to continue walking at a 45-degree angle instead of turning your whole body, which strains your shoulder. Okay? One step, second step. Much faster. How'd that feel?
Yeah, that was a lot better. When I was first learning the original self-defense, my inclination was always to sort of push my hip over because I felt like otherwise you're going to slide off. So that's one of my big problems is actually having people slide off. If you're walking this way, and that's basically the objective. So you're sort of taking advantage of the natural.
No, so that's a good point. O-goshi, my opinion, is how a lot of the other judo techniques evolved was because people would slide around the hip. So we have our original o-goshi. If he slides around, I can go to harai gosh, I can go to hani gosh, I can go to uchimata. These are all front throws, and why are they there? You know, again, my personal opinion is that somebody started stepping around to the side, which lent itself to another throw. But a very valid point is for o-goshi to work, we have to get the hip all the way across. So if he's heavy and he has good base, and I step here to get my hip all the way across, sometimes that's where the strain occurs. It's straining my back and my shoulder. I know I can lift, but I can do the same thing by simply walking. So I have the control. I have to place this first foot here anyway. I'm not going to worry about really sticking my hip out and straining my back. I'm just going to walk. And it's very fast. So switch up here. I'm going to give a little, not resistance, I'm just going to be heavy.
Okay.
And I want you to fit in o-goshi. Try to get your hip across so I don't slide.
Okay.
And then we'll switch to the next one. But go ahead and get a side clinch.
Okay. Yeah, that's my problem is also because I'm taller than you, I need to get my hips underneath.
Very good point. Tall people trying to do o-goshi on someone shorter, this is where a lot of you will notice that you have back pain or shoulder pain. Great point. Go ahead and try to follow through with it though.
Okay. So over here. Yeah, and you're sliding off. Right.
Because and what I'm looking at is if your hip doesn't fully come across,
yes,
I can slide off. There's a counter to every technique. Obviously, I'm not being a jerk, but just looking at adding a little bit of resistance. So make sure your hip's across. Still do o-goshi, but get your hip all the way across. Okay, that's better. The throw was going to happen there.
Yes.
Go back down.
But again, to do that, I really felt like I had to really extend my hip really far over.
Right. Now, the important piece, especially with a gi, is you do want to load. So as you have my hip, you actually want to pick me up like a suitcase as you step in front. So that can still help the throw, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's go back. So now, without changing anything that puts you in an awkward position, do the technique, but just walk in this direction instead of turning so much the other direction. Okay, so side clinch.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you feel any strain on that?
Effortless.
And let's take a look at it again. Stop right before you do it. Do o-goshi first and stop. Stop here.
Oh yeah, I'm way off balance.
Yeah. Now you should be loading me more, but I understand why it's hard. Okay, come back down. do the same thing. We'll stop you right at the end, but do o-goshi.
Yes, I feel much more in balance here.
And now just slightly pick me up. Yeah. Notice how I started to rotate around his hip already. Again, because it's such a small, you know, if we could see his hip bone right here, he's actually rotating me around that hip bone rather than the whole of his back. Okay, so do them once more in sequence. Just do o-goshi and then walk through uki-goshi without any. I'll throw you a haymaker just real slow. O-goshi. Nothing wrong with that one. Uki-goshi. Very fast. I feel that my body really does a kind of a windmill off of this one.
And when we were doing the choke, I mean, I was over so fast compared to what I'm used to doing. I mean, by the time I even thought to start doing the break fall, I was already hitting the ground.
So my Aiki Jiu-Jitsu instructor used to tell me when I would get stuck on this technique from the double lapel grab, we'd come into the side. As I turn the elbow, I would get stuck here a lot, and my teacher would say, just walk, just walk. And it took me a while to understand it. So I'm taking that application to how I perform regular o-goshi or self-defense from a side clinch. So again, just a regular haymaker.
Okay.
I'm off to the side, and I hear my Aiki Jiu-Jitsu instructor saying, just walk. So I'm just gonna walk. And it's that simple.